Hey everybody, how's it? This is Jeeves here, and I decided that I wanted to celebrate things that I've seen and people that have, for many years started off here in Hawaii and then ended up going to Hollywood, like Jake Akuna. What's up, Jake?
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
I'm doing good, man. Look, you're all looking so colorful and so nice, and I'm kind of drab and kind of flat. I guess you must be a special effects dude.
No, I'm a visual effects dude.
Oh,
There's a difference.
already check me on that one already. We're not even a minute into it. I got to get checked. I love that.
That's a perfectly understandable misunderstanding there. A lot of people they don't know the difference between special effects versus visual effects.
Oh
And
well, you know what? While we're on it, then do tell. Wait, before we do though, we'll get on that. But I
sure.
just want to let everybody know that I met Jake in the early 2000s, and he was actually kind of a DP, cameraman, co-director, co-producer of a show called Cutmaster Spaz. What was that? It was Cutmaster.
It was called This and That,
This and
actually,
that. I'm sorry.
but
Forgive me.
hosted by the
Hosted
world
by
famous
right.
Cutmaster Spaz.
And it was a show that out here in Hawaii back in the day.
hmm
There, and I don't know if they still, because I don't watch TV that often, but OC16 um, kind of had a great opportunity for young producers and
hmm
creators and stuff to put on shows that
hmm
were locally transmitted throughout the islands
hmm
here. And it gave a lot of people opportunities to, like I said, do shows, be creative, produce,
hmm
learn about the TV industry, learn about the industry of making money on TV and stuff. And This and That actually was a show that Jake was partners with host Cutmaster Spaz that did a lot of things from educational fun things to comedic things to public awareness things and stuff. So
hmm
anyhow, now Jake's all grown up and he's in Hollywood as a what was that, graphic effects designer? No.
Visual effects producer now, but supervisor, artist, and kind of crazy to think that's been nearly 2 decades now. I'm like,
Oh
and
my God.
this October will be the 20th anniversary of the first episode of This and That back in Hawaii. So that's, that's marking my professional filmmaking career, I'd say. So that's going on 20 years now. So
My goodness, I can't
fun.
believe it's been that long. And then, of course, I was fortunate enough to kind of be a fly on the wall and chirp in your ear however I could as you were making your decision to come to Hollywood and stuff. And
Oh.
so you've done it. You're 20 years later. You have an absolutely super impressive IMDb page, as
Oh,
now
shucks.
everybody can see right here. I'm showing everybody. And so let's just start with that journey. I really brief. I first I started off with what's the difference between the SFX and the. So explain that to me because now obviously I need to learn.
That's okay. Special effects, it really refers to any of the effects that are made on set, practical in camera. Like so, you'll have special makeup effects. You'll have special effects like pyrotechnics. You'll have miniature models, things like that. That's all. That's all special effects. Visual effects is done after the fact in post production. Most of the time, using tools like CGI. People again will mix up. Well, they're sort of interchangeable, saying CGI and VFX. CGI just refers to the computer generated imagery. VFX just refers to visual effects, the department as a whole. But because not everything is necessarily made only in the computer. Sometimes you'll take practical things like taking a live action plate, you'll composite it with another live action shot, and you can put them together to create the illusion of of whatever it is that you're trying to portray in the film. So that's what I do. I do the visual effects all from a computer.
So why don't we start really quick because I want to ramp up into things pretty fast here because we're in that kind of mode here on the internet and so talk story.
Sure.
But where was your um, the starting? I mean, when you met Cutmaster and
Mm-hmm.
you ended up doing all that work, the editing, the shooting, and everything like that. What was before that? What was Jake kind of thinking about he wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and what kind of family support did you have through that transition?
Well, that was, I mean, we're going way back now. That was,
It's in
I
the
really
1900s,
started
buddy.
in the 1900s. Yes. I started, I mean, like my first exposure to like the film business, I guess, would probably be in elementary school. Like in fifth grade, I think I got fifth and sixth grade, I got involved in our elementary school had a very like a morning the morning news closed circuit thing, so like I got involved with that very loosely, and then was involved in a couple of different programs. I think one of them was at Kalaheo High School. They had a video media department, but then as I got into high school, started doing little action scenes. I was part of the theater program, so I'm a theater kid.
Hmm.
Always want to make tell some kind of story. I was doing a lot of magic. I was learning magic, and which I
Oh
think
yeah,
comes
I
in.
remember that.
Yeah, I was doing a birthday party magic and stuff between the like seventh grade and high school. I was doing magic shows at birthday parties, and I was even part of the Society of American Magicians as a kid. And so
Oh, I didn't know that.
and which all that really translated. My wife only in later years, like in recent years, she says, you're still a magician. I'm like, well, I practice cards every now and then. And I'm like, but then she says, no, 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 you're making magic on screen. You're just doing it digitally now, with all these effects
She's
tools
right.
and everything.
Yeah.
You make people levitate, you manipulate fire, you do all kinds of things. I'm like, oh, you're kind of right there. But
That's
in
true.
high
That is
school,
true. I have to say, forgive me for cutting you off, but that
oh
is
yeah,
super true. That it seems like you've transitioned through that, bending the perception of what other people see that you produce. So be it magic
sure.
to effects.
Hmm.
I think you
Yeah.
really sounds like your wife really just nailed it to the wall with that
She
breakdown.
she did, and so like when I was like, I'm not really practicing anymore, she goes, no, you are every day. It's you're on the computer though, but it's a little different now.
So
Um,
when you say high school though, you know how they say over here, bro, where you grad?
what school you in?
What school you in, bro? So
Castle.
you went to Castle. Oh, okay, good. Well, I just wanted to go through that.
Kasso. Castle.
Okay, so you went through high school and everything, and like you said, you're a theater geek. You've already
Hmm.
got your hands into magic and everything.
I
When
was the
you,
kid in school that was carrying the camera around all the time, and
oh,
like so, like camera and a laptop, like well, I can, like so it was, I was that weirdo, that always wanted to make movies. And then in high school, I made like a movie that, I mean, it was awful, but it was actually feature length, and I actually did that too. It was
that's great. How
produced,
many people do
directed,
that?
starred in. Yeah, I know, right? But then because of that, in the process of making that, I met Cutmaster Spaz, and he was like, "Oh, up and coming kid, cool. He's doing his thing." And around when I was 19, that's when OC16 went from they were a station on in Hawaii that they were playing a lot of local content, but they weren't 24 hours. It wasn't a 24-hour station. And then they wanted to make the switch to 24 hours, so they were looking for a lot more content. So what they did, you were very kind to say, oh, they were giving young people opportunities to learn. I think that was actually just me, because they were reaching out to the local celebrities, the local DJs, like people with some kind of presence that they could put a show on and people would watch, right? And a lot of them had a production company or a production studio behind them. Spaz, he knew a 19-year-old kid that had a camera and a computer, so that was me. And then he said, "Hey, you want to come do a TV show with me?" So for better or worse, OC16 basically gave a TV show to a 19-year-old with not much experience at all, but just really wanted to make movies. So our show
Jeez.
was very much like it was kind of a little bit Wayne's World, not the movie, the show that Wayne put on, but it wasn't
Right, sure.
it wasn't quite cable access, but it wasn't, like it wasn't mainstream network. So it was somewhere in that middle zone, but we had a great time doing it, and it was basically my film school. And then after a few years of that, I said, I think I actually want to go to film school now. So then I actually went to film school. Yeah.
So, but I mean that was but hats off to OC16 for and I guess having to make when they made that decision to go 24/7 and having to reach out to
Hmm.
find more talent to fill those pukas. And that's also, let's also remember that if an episode was shot, it ran, I think, for like 6 weeks, twice a week or something. There was a
Mm.
very unique programming, I believe. And also, as I recall from OC16, there were some really super unique shows all the way from, handheld tiny TV all the way to the
Hmm.
fishing show to
Oh yeah,
surfing.
yeah.
And they were very well produced.
Oh yeah.
and very
Yeah.
well shot and hosted and stuff like that. And I think
Hmm.
OC16 played quite the part in um, marinating, let's just say, and steeping some of the talents that ended
Oh,
up
for
going
sure.
outbound, such as
For
yourself,
sure. Oh
So,
yeah.
so that being said, can you describe to me a little bit of like that production process working with Cutmaster?
Mm. Well, yeah, that was something because we were figuring it out as we went.
Mm.
Because Baz hadn't produced a show before. He'd been on the radio. He knew radio left and right, and but me, like, just telling us like I didn't have like professional TV experience myself. Again, I was just a kid that like knew how to put stuff together, and I had a little camera and then I invested in a bigger camera. It wasn't a massive camera, but invested in like a prosumer XL2, and at the time that was fancy,
Yeah, it
but
was.
and he so I mean, like, putting it together. So again, they reached out to him and said, "Hey, we would like you to do a show," and he needed somebody to put it together. And that he was like, "Hey, you got talent. Come on, let's go make a show together." And basically, uh, I mean, shoot, you say they ran an episode like for like 6 weeks, and no one told us that. So in fact, nobody told us we could actually even have season breaks. So what we did was we did a brand new show every week for the first year. So we did 52 episodes straight,
Jeez.
of just like every week. We were shooting the week before to release the next week, and when the one aired, we were shooting the next week's episode, and we were short on content so much. I mean, we repeated sketches. We did these comedy sketches to fill in the gaps between our interviews, and I mean, we repeated those like all the
Like
time.
the
So
infamous pickle. Now I know that you get so people run up on you in Hawaii that say, "Hey, dude, you were the pickle." Guys, for everybody who's just watching this,
the
it
ones that
was a
remember the show,
character.
yes.
Yeah, it was a character in Cutmaster Spaz when somebody would dress up as a pickle, and it
Hmm.
would be pseudo comedic and stuff like that. Whose idea was the pickle?
I think Spaz had just like he came into possession of a banana costume for whatever reason, and then said, "Wouldn't it be hilarious if we had a character?" I mean, we can't use it as it was. I think it was actually a Jamba Juice mascot costume. He said we can't just leave it as that because then it's copper. So he had it airbrushed and repainted to look like a pickle, and said, "Wouldn't it be great if we had a character on the show that was just in a pickle costume for no reason at all." Like, and the joke was that he was an intern on the show that would, say, "Hey, you can be on the show, but you got to wear this pickle costume." I know that's not really workplace appropriate these days,
Well,
but
I'm
that was
gonna.
the character. So,
Well, I'm gonna find video links on YouTube, and I'm gonna put them down in the description. So if we could find some this
uh-oh.
and that shows online, especially with the pickle, I'll definitely get those links down there. So you go through this transition with
Mhm.
working with Cutmaster, and then you say to yourself, "Okay, I'm going to film school." Where did you go to film school?
I actually went to, of all places, the Musicians Institute, which is
In
kind of
Hollywood,
funny,
you mean
in
MI? They
Hollywood.
had
Yeah.
they I had no
Yep.
idea they had a
They,
production
they
or
had the
visual.
Film Institute of Technology at the time. I'm not sure that, I think they probably still have it.
Fit,
Um,
FIT.
yeah, yeah. Well, we had to change it because then the Fashion Institute came along and said, you got to that's our name, so they changed it to Film IT. And
Okay, that works.
hey, big difference, but
Okay, wait a second. So hang on for 1 second. So
mhm,
then,
yes.
when you make that decision, this is the time that you say
Hmm.
aloha to family and
Hmm.
friends in Hawaii, and Cutmaster and all that sort of
Hmm.
stuff. And I know that I've talked to Cutmaster many times about your career trajectory and stuff, and he's so elated for the things that you've achieved and stuff. So you leave and
Hmm.
you go to Hollywood and you get into film IT or
Hmm.
whatever.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so that must have taken a little bit of nerve to gather that all up, make that move by yourself. The guy from Hawaii that's in production, you
Mm.
relatively don't know anybody out there except me because I still had my recording studio in Studio City. So at
Right.
least you had some kind of connectivity. What was that like making that decision, leaving, Hawaii, going to Hollywood, knowing what kind of risk that was?
Uh, I think I was too dumb to know what a risk it was. It was, I I no,
Don't
really,
make me
because
laugh too hard. I'm gonna have to grab my asthma spray again.
absolutely, because it was I mean, man, life can really kick you in the teeth to wake you up when you get out of your
Yeah,
comfort zone, right? So
yeah.
I did film school. The film school experience was amazing. It was great. It was uh because the original intent was I was going to leave. I was saying, hey, I want to go to film school, and then I'm gonna come back and bring what I learned back to the show. And that's exactly what I did. And it's I went. It was a real intense program because what they did was they got your hands dirty real fast. Most film schools will, you'll spend your first year going over theory and storytelling and these things, and these are wonderful things to go through if that's what you want to do. But this program was like, this is how you run the camera. This is how you use the software. These are the standards you're going to need to know. This and What it did, especially because it was at a music school, was it connected us with other music students, and the whole curriculum of the program was at the end you're going to produce, direct, shoot, whatever department especially you want to be a part of, but you're going to make a music video, and especially music videos are basically just short films these days. They
Very
are.
smart of MIT.
Yeah,
Very smart. Why not
yeah.
get a production
Oh
team
yeah.
school so that we could shoot music videos on the,
Oh
students
yeah.
that we have in the bands that
Absolutely. And what that did too was this is right on the cusp of going from film to digital. So I was very lucky. I got what they did was they connected us with music business program students,
Mhm.
because what they want to do is, like, they want, if they themselves are not running a band, they're learning how to manage a band or run a band or produce them. And so part of that too was they were coming in and saying, okay, well, we'll finance a music video. So I actually got a fully financed music video to shoot. I mean, it was like $5,000, but I mean, I didn't make any of that. That all went straight into production.
Sure.
But what that allowed for was for us to actually use film equipment and shoot on film. And I actually shot my first big music video there on 35 millimeter. That's my first and last thing I ever shot and directed on 35
Yeah.
millimeter. And that, I mean, that was a really amazing experience doing it that way, because after we shot it, then we would take it to the color house in Santa Monica. I mean, like, they took us through some real cool steps to do this whole process. And they got, like I said, they got your hands dirty real fast, because again, everything in a music video is just, it's the same process as shooting a movie, but just on a tighter schedule, tighter budget, tighter everything. So you're doing everything really fast and concentrated. And it really allowed me to, like, just understand the process and learn real quick. So that
So,
was a crazy
so they
process.
hit you with a fire hose,
Yep.
with all that education.
Yep.
Um, and I'm assuming you're already starting, also through that process, learning the CGI world of what ended up
Hmm.
being your career. Now you say you
Hmm.
went there you went to the school. You came
Hmm.
back here to Hawaii. How long, when you came back here, when you brought what you did, home and
Hmm.
whatever, and shared with
Hmm.
everything, and with Cutmaster and team, how long were you here before you said, I have to pull up, and in order for me to move forward with my
Hmm.
career and take these risks, I need to move back to Hollywood? How long was that little, like, grace
I'd
period?
I'd say about maybe a year and a half. I think I stuck around for about a year and a half. I because I again, the program was pretty short. I was back in the spring, I think, of 2006, I think. And then I ended up moving back to LA November 2007. So it wasn't terribly long I was back. I was back long enough to, like, have finished about 200 episodes for This and That. From, the beginning of This and That, we did about 200 episodes.
Wow.
And I, said, hey, I think I gotta go make a good go of it in LA and see what I can do,
And
and
that and that too,
yeah.
that's what I loved about Cutmaster, and his energy, and his just who he is as an individual, to, imua, go,
Mm,
go
yep.
go do those things that you need to do. And I think also
Hmm.
for Cutmaster as well, things were changing 2007, 8. He was also focusing on new directions as well with the show.
Hmm.
So you get back to Hollywood, and
Mm-hmm.
now you live there, and now it's time to become part of the fabric of Hollywood. Which I think when
Mm-hmm.
way back in the day, we would meet for lunch and something like at the Good Earth in Studio City. Remember that? That
Oh
was always
yeah.
fun. Yeah, and we would talk about, okay, so the path that you're going to take most likely is going to look something like this, even though I
Mm-hmm.
don't know because I can kind of mirror what the path is in the music industry, what it might be with the film industry, meaning
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be jobs you might have to do for free. There's going to be jobs you might have to
Mm-hmm.
do that just actually feed you lunch or
Yep.
maybe give you a little bit more and stuff, while you're still trying to figure out.
Or meetings with friends hoping that, they might buy lunch because you can afford it and everything too. And
Well, but that was like, but for me, that was, I loved it. I don't even think you had a car the first time. I drove all the way out to your place in Hollywood and picked you up and
yeah,
we went out.
yeah,
But that's part of the great journey. That's
yeah.
part of life. That's you and I talking and going, man,
Mm-hmm.
remember that? And now
Yeah.
here we are having fun on this podcast, and I
Oh
get
yeah.
to celebrate with you a lot of all your successes as well as a family and having two
Mm.
daughters now.
Yeah.
So those first, let's say that first 2 years in Hollywood as
Mm-hmm.
graphics designer, why can't I
Well,
remember
well,
why can't I remember what it is that you do? What is it again?
visual effects.
Visual effects.
Visual
Okay.
effects. Just remember
So,
the fingers, the magic visual effects fingers.
bruh, the older I get, the better I was, bruh. It's so
Yeah.
mental. Anyhow, those first couple of years, as you were kind of like, where do I go? What do I do with my skill set and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
What were those first? This is really for those who are still
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that transition because Hawaii is just so full of incredible talent, and I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes there's like, oh, should I? How do I do? Those first
Mm-hmm.
couple of years between feast and famine or
Mm-hmm.
paying rent and taking these jobs. What was that like?
That was bonkers. It was I moved out and basically just had a like I bought a cheap laptop and kind of got things started. And I came out to be a director, and nobody's gonna just hand me a director job. I mean, even if I said, oh, I did like 200 episodes of this show in Hawaii, nobody's heard of in LA at least. Nobody in LA has heard of, and nobody's gonna just hire me to do that. I'm like, well, I can edit. I'm good at editing. All right. Oh, there's a million editors that are way more qualified. Okay, I need to like stack my toolbox so I can be like, hey, I'm valuable in these senses. So, I'm an artist to illustrate. So, like, if there's also storyboards people needed, I was a really jack of all trades, master of none in some respects. But the saying that the part of that phrase people often forget is the jack of all trades, master of none will get more work than the master of one. So it's the
Well,
yep, nobody got the
excuse
second,
me.
and that's not a
That
that's
was
not
good.
I mean, also you're going to be
It's
working a
true.
lot, so like just to pay the
Yeah.
bills, it's a
Yeah.
struggle. So it's, hey, the master of one, you might pay for your whole year off of one job, but like then so anyway, it was me just taking any little job editing, trying to direct, not so many of those at early on, but just trying to do whatever I could. And so visual effects, I was learning After Effects back at film school, and so that really became one of my big tools and selling points, especially coming from a show, in Hawaii where I was doing show graphics and things like that. So like I did a lot of, I said, okay, well, I can do show graphics, I can do, visual effects here and there. And that was quite a struggle. I mean, like it was hard finding the work for that. And I ended up going back and forth between LA and Hawaii because my I guess I was getting a lot of requests to do music videos in Hawaii, and so I was actually flying back and forth. I'd fly back, I'd shoot like 3 music videos while I'm in town for like 2 weeks or a week and a half or something, and then I'd fly back to LA and edit on my computer. So I'm like, hey, I'm working in LA, sort of. But and so I was doing
Very
that for like,
positive.
yeah, and I did that, and that paid the bills pretty well for a little while. I wasn't getting much work in LA. That's the funny thing. It really started with Spaz saying, hey, I've got some guys here. If you're not working right there, if you're not working out there right now, if you're not too busy, the job pays enough, and they might be able to fly you out. So I was flown out, stay with family, obviously, but like then come out, shoot a couple of music videos, come back. And so I did that back and forth between 2009 and 10. And then I think on one of my trips, somebody said, oh, well, you'll be back in like 6 months, right? And I was like, I like just thinking about it, I'm like, I probably will be, but that's not what I intended to do. So
Right.
I said, you know what? No, I'm not. I want yeah, I'd love to keep continuing this, but I have to actually make a real push in LA to do this. And then when I did that, nothing. Like no work at all. And so it was me hitting up there weren't the websites like there are now. I mean, you have your maybe had your LinkedIn, but like LinkedIn wasn't really doing much for me. I was on a couple of like industry sites for hiring workers for that sort of thing, employment for industry work, but nothing really. But then on Craigslist, I had put like out a ton of feelers and saying like, hey, I see somebody needs something cut here or something. I got maybe one or two hits on Craigslist, and I was kind of really honing my VFX skills on all those music videos I did. So I had a fairly solid reel for someone my age at the time and everything. So it was, it did its it got me enough work. So that was good. But one day I get an email from somebody through Craigslist. Hey, I saw your reel. I saw you reached out. I've got a pitch video that for a story that I want to do. And I'm hoping, you can cut me together a pitch reel. And I've had those before. A lot of college students, hey, they got an idea for a movie, so then they say, okay, well, I want to make a fake trailer, so or something like that, to sell the idea, take that to maybe producers who might want to finance it. So I've done that sort of thing before. And I thought, oh, cool, awesome. And he says, oh, okay, well, here's my NDA. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll sign your NDA. I didn't
Ooh,
think it
big
was a
time.
big
Here we
deal.
go.
Yeah,
This is it.
everybody's got an NDA, and so, and then, and then after that, I never really got this guy's name. He just said his name was Darren. I was like, okay, cool, and then I signed the NDA to send it, and then he says, "Oh, hey, so I'm Darren Bousman. I directed Saw 2, 3, and 4, and I've also did Repo the Genetic Opera." And I'm like, I know these things, and I'm like,
Wow.
and so,
I love
and
the
like
fact that
to,
he was so humble about it up front, that he didn't, that he
yeah,
waited until he signed the NDA. He kind of
yeah,
like put you through the ringer, tested you, making sure that you, or
yeah,
just looked and made sure that you fit his
hmm
desired work model to maybe become part of his stable. And then after everything he signed, he goes, by the way, this is what I
Well, it
do.
wasn't so much a by the way I did this and that. It's like he was trying to like just like let me know like, hey, no, I'm not a creep on the internet. And
That's
what's
true.
really hilarious is
But I'll
that
creep you out on film.
oh yeah, yeah. Every time I meet some of his friends, and we've had a pretty good working relationship since then. And every time I meet a friend of his at a party or something, they say, "How'd you meet Darren?" And then I'd be like, Greg's List, and then people like,
So
what?
funny.
And like
What a
his,
great story, though. That's
and his wife likes to
fantastic.
say online dating. so,
What a
so
great story. So then now at that
yeah.
point,
Hmm.
you spend a day or two, you're over the moon that you get the opportunity to work
Yeah. Yeah.
with this guy. So
Hmm.
at what point did you do a complete project as a
Mm.
post guy?
As a visual effects
Visual effects. I don't know
visual
why
effects.
I can't remember that. Drugs are bad. Okay.
Well, because you're a sound guy, not a visual guy. No.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So when was the very first time that you got like the first big job? Was it through him?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I did a lot of little things. I did something for somebody on College Humor a little bit there, here and there. But then when Darren came along, I cut his, I made his demo reel or pitch reel for this film he wanted to make, and that went really well. It was a great experience working with him. And then after that, he had a movie he was doing called 11 11 11, and that was the like and then he needed someone to come in and pick up some VFX. I think his VFX artist or team or whoever was, they did a certain amount of work and then they couldn't finish the film or whatnot. But he brought me on to finish the VFX on this film, and I'm like, oh, this is my first movie and everything, and so I did that, and since then it was like really kind of, hey, I did he brought me on to be a VFX supervisor on his film The Devil's Carnival. I came on to do the sequel of that as well. I think we did a little bit more work together too, but it was in the process of doing 11 that I met his post supervisor, and his post supervisor really liked my work. So then he starts bringing me around to all his other films that he's supervising post production on, and then just great word of mouth after that. Leads to me meeting a producer who's hey, this kid's affordable, things like that. And he's all right, but he's affordable, so that works for everybody.
I'm sure you're
And that
better than
was
that. He's all right. I mean, still affordable doesn't necessarily mean somebody's going to get something
I
cheap and wants
sure. I mean,
bad
I could get
production.
the work done, and I also, having not actually worked in a VFX studio with other, like seeing how the actual system works like that, I didn't know how to price myself. So I mean, like it was, people were like, that's all you. I mean, yeah, sure, that price works. I guess we'll have to live with that price. And so and so that got me a lot of work, and that really got the ball rolling on that. So.
Well, I mean, what a great story. I mean, because I mean that is Hollywood. Hollywood is that kind of thing. It's not
Mm.
the amount of jobs that you might get based on constantly having to over network. A lot of times, I found myself, my life's work as a composer has been based on 3 or 4 relationships. So
Hmm.
I wasn't going to party after party after party or anything of that nature to try to continue to network.
Hmm.
Maybe I could have been a contender if I did, but I settled in a very unique part of the industry, either as a composer, film, TV, as you
Hmm.
already know. Matter of
Sure.
fact, we work together, which is great.
Yep.
But for the specialty of being a library composer for over
Hmm.
35 years,
Hmm.
and that has to do with the relationship of one
Absolutely.
individual that
Oh
ended
yeah.
up teeing me off to somebody else and to somebody else, and then he ended up being somewhat of an agent for me to do a couple movies,
Hmm.
and so it's a it's more of a common path, I think, than people might
Sure.
uh, see as what it is in Hollywood that makes it work. Now, a lot of times that can make it
Hmm.
scary too, because if
Hmm.
you don't sometimes network out of the box, that one person is no longer at the production company, or that person no
Hmm.
longer has the same connections, or that person just ups and leaves and decides to go sell, tacos at a street,
Hmm.
at a truck, a lunch truck, and says,
Oh
I'm done
yeah.
with the industry.
Oh yeah.
So, there's a little bit obviously to saying, it's always easier to get a job while you're working, so network a little bit.
Right.
And instead of going, oh my God, I haven't worked for 6 months, what am I going to do? It's while you're
Oh yeah.
working. That's, I think, the
Yeah.
big magic,
Hmm.
magic
Yeah.
that it is that, while you're working is when you do a little networking. So during this
Hmm.
process, you, how many years do you think that was that you just kind of spoke of before you ended up working with other SFX guys? Um,
Well, it's
uh,
funny. I have not worked with too many VFX guys, and sorry. I've networked and met a couple of artists here and there, but I've actually never actually still to this day. I mean, my wife and I run a company together, but that's really been a case of me. What we do is we hire artists on a per job basis. So we're still like a decentralized studio in a way. So I've still never actually been in this studio system. So like the process, I mean, for me, like you were asking, how long was that process from me trying to figure it out to to actually working? That movie was, I mean, it came out for 11/11/11, I think. So that was the date that it came out. So it was probably, I mean, it felt longer, but it was probably like 6 months or less of me like just like, oh, what am I gonna do? Where am I gonna where am I gonna find work? I'm at the time I'm like I'm behind on rent, and I'm buying bananas for dinner, things like that. And then I got 11/11/11, and that job, I mean, it was I mean, that job basically got me out of my studio apartment in Hollywood, put me in a at least it put me in a nice apartment in Glendale, and so that worked out. So I mean, I think maybe about a year or two of kind of finding my way of like, okay, I think VFX is the thing, because that seems to be working out at least, and I seem to have uh, some um, some proficiency in what I'm doing, so that seemed to work out. And then
well, I
yeah,
mean, I'm sorry if I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. I'm trying to
no,
compact
please.
this. Um, So while you're doing this, you still have desires to be a director and a
Oh
writer,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So this is something where
Hmm.
within the industry you have found a really nice, comfortable thing that you can do in post production that allows you to
Hmm.
still be creative, you know, keep
Hmm.
that, you know, Jake Akuna magic mind, you
Hmm.
know, and also efficient and very
Hmm.
detailed oriented.
Hmm.
Even though I know that perhaps the kind of jobs you get now and then, there's a lot of creative challenges that go on based on budgets and stuff and
Sure.
what you can and
Yeah.
cannot do.
Hmm.
Um, Briefly, I just want to just kind of bring into this conversation directing and writing. So, are you at the same time while you're breaking away from the little studio Hollywood and banana a la dinner to working on a movie and realizing, wow, I can do this? Were you still like in the back of your mind, I still want to write, I still want to direct? And if you
Oh yeah.
were you kind of doing that like behind it all? Like you'd work 10 hours on
Yeah.
a scene and then all of a sudden you'd take a break and then you'd work a little bit on writing and directing whatever the ideas that you have.
Oh yeah. I'm still doing it. And it's been a process, you know. I in 20 no no 20 it was about 2011 or so, I think, that I I shot a short film, and it was because I'm a big gamer. I was playing a lot of Call of Duty at the time, and I had this there's a game in Call of Duty where you're battling Nazi zombies, right? You know, and if I don't know if GB, you've been gaming a lot. I don't know if you played that yet, but
No, I'm recently into gaming now, just only a
yeah.
year. You know, this channel's really dragging me through the rinse cycle here, but I'm so digging it.
Oh yeah, I highly recommend getting into Call of Duty Zombies. That's it's sort of an offshoot of what the original game was. But then I wanted to shoot a fan film of this because there's like four really interesting characters, and basically I shot a little, like, it was basically a music video, and just these guys running away from Nazi zombies in the middle of in a stream, and that was a pretty wild experience. But in doing that, I had this idea for like writing a full movie, and I wrote this whole fan film and everything, and even did a little bit of crowdfunding to try and to get it made. And you know, it's not my IP, so you know, I can't just like go and actually sell this or anything. But
Right.
I got it. I raised a tiny bit of money, and I shot a tiny part of it, and I put it out on the internet. And so I think that was the, you know, between those two things was between 2011 and 2013, I think. There was this was when we actually shot the bigger thing.
Mm.
So I mean, I had been pursuing those to get those made, and I'm, you know, still pursuing. A few years ago, I did a short film that I directed, that I know this really awesome composer that really helped me out with it. That oh yeah, it was you.
Friends for life, man. Friends for life.
Oh
What
yeah.
can I do for you? And what was the name of this film?
It was called Here and After.
Okay, guys, wait,
Yeah.
hang on. The link will be down below.
Well, now it will be. I finally made it live, so
Yeah,
I
no, I know.
just
You
recently
finally said,
did.
okay, fine, I'll put it out
I
there. But guys, if you do want to check this movie out, the link will be down below.
yeah, I think it's a lot of fun.
Or it's a
Yeah,
short,
but
right? Well, how long was
yeah,
that?
it's a short. It's a short. It's about 15 minutes or so. It's a little slightly it's a little different take on the exorcism stories, you know, that you see. But it's that's one that I've been developing for a long time. I'm still trying to develop into a feature. And I'm even thinking of like series ideas too for it maybe, but we'll see. I mean, no, we won't put the cart before the horse on that, but you know, we're trying.
Well,
So,
I think it's wonderful that you, you know, you're so passionate. That's the one thing that I enjoy when I sit with you and we hang out and stuff like that. You're very passionate. You're very much in love with the creative arts and everything. Like you know, we were talking about, be it behind the camera, editing, SFX,
mhm,
magic, writing,
sure.
directing, DP. I mean, you're one stop when it comes to a lot of things that could be done. Now to kind of circle a little bit back into VFX.
Hey, you got it right.
You, it happens. So you have a tremendous amount of credits on IMDb, and so now here we are. Briefly, just for myself too, because whenever I think of VFX, I only think of the things that I'm aware of, which is
Mhm.
blood, fire, smoke,
Mm-hmm.
explosions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like a staple of a VFX education? Kind of like these are the things that you learn to do, and then as you
Sure,
get
sure.
better, you learn to manipulate them more, and then as you
Mm-hmm.
get better, you can create your own, and then as you get better, what outside
Mm-hmm.
of explosions and fires and
Mm-hmm.
blood and
Mm-hmm.
gunfire stuff? I remember you were showing me that.
Mm-hmm.
What other
Yeah.
things are an important task of the VFX or outside of it, that kind of stuff do
Outside the big
VFX guys?
splashy stuff, right? I mean, like, yeah, there's
Yeah,
the big splashy stuff. There's the like you said, there's the blood, guts, gunfire, explosions. That's my, that's my bread and butter right there too. But and then you'll see something like, Star Wars, pick a shot. They're all visual effects, right? It's
right.
buildings that
Okay,
massive
right.
buildings, spaceships, all that stuff. You could do all that. But like what a lot of people don't think about, which tends to be a lot of the work that I do, is like, all right, we got a really complicated shot for you. A grip left his coffee cup in the back corner of this shot. We need you to erase it.
Just like that famous scene on Game of Thrones. I think when one of the
Yep,
actresses left
yep,
the
yeah,
coffee, the Starbucks coffee thing there, but they didn't catch it till later.
yeah. I think I put out some post saying like, hey, at HBO, call me. I could have done this for you. I could have erased that. So, um,
So removing things as
yeah,
well, or
removing things. Every now and then, you see a little boom mic pop into frame, and so you got to
uh,
erase that sometimes. But I've got like an amazing team of artists that I bring on for a lot of these things too, that do a lot of these paint outs. Sometimes it's like as big as like, hey, there's an entire person in this frame that we need to get rid of that shouldn't be there, that like maybe stepped into frame at the wrong time, so you got to erase them from the shot. Or it could be something like, hey, we shot on a public road, but uh, so we don't want to show what these all these other cars' license plates in the background, or hey, the weather wasn't great, but so can you clear up, make the sky look a little nicer, or things
wow.
like that.
Okay,
Yeah, you'll
that's
see
you
a lot of
guys.
things like that. Yeah, yeah. I think one of the like the big ones when that was, you started to see a lot of like cleanup things like that back in like the, I didn't work on it obviously, but back in like say like Forrest Gump, that was like one of the big movies that was like one of the first early on to be doing like just doing the kind of the invisible work that you don't see. Like, you'd be like, oh, well, clearly he's running through the forest and there's explosions behind happening behind him, or but then you don't think about like, oh, they did work to make the background and like that shot just look perfectly picturesque at like at sunset, and so just
Yeah.
the amount of work you go into to make that stuff just look really nice sometimes. So
So
there's, yeah.
would you say that Forrest Gump was the halo of the video games? In other words, what I mean by that is so much incredible work was done on that film in particular for that guy, you guys,
VFX.
VFX, like how Halo may have changed the game in.
Oh, sure.
So would you like? I'm not. I'm the only reason why I make the
Hmm.
comparison is because I that's an incredible amount of work and it's got to be so
Hmm.
freaking tedious. What did you say to
Hmm.
paint people out or do all that stuff?
Paint things out. Yeah, yeah,
But does I'm gonna go out and then come back in on the subject matter.
sure.
Does what you do the same thing that people do, developers do in gaming? Is there anything that folks such as yourself
Hmm.
in the broad scope of your services, do you guys,
Hmm.
as a profession, are you guys the same folks that would work on in video games?
Well, I mean, sure. There's a lot of stuff in video games where, I mean, I've known visual effects artists that have worked for the game studios too, and a lot of their what they do is transferable in their talents. They do a lot of the similar things. So I know a guy whose job was to simulate and render explosions for video games, and he
Mm.
did, that's what he did for movies, and he was just also, really good at it for video games. I know. Yeah, I mean, I know, I mean, a lot of digital animators too. Animation is a big part of VFX as well. So character animation, you look at something like Gollum in Lord of the Rings, that's a fully CG character, and you're animating that character, and there's mocap, motion capture that's involved, performance capture, where they put on the suits and everything to animate. Like I myself have motion capture suits. And for a film, I was actually put on the suit, and I was the creature in this movie where there was a monster at the very end. And I think I got credited as the monster. It was kind of fun. But like that's the same, today for video games, that's a big one too. A friend of mine is a director for a lot of video games. He's directed like I want to say like the first dozen or so Call of Duty video games, and he's still directing video games today. And he's,
When I'm
I
sorry,
mean,
forgive me because I'm new
yeah.
at this. When you
Mhm.
say directed, is that the same as what I
The
guess people call devs or developers, or is
No,
that
he's the performance director. So he runs a recording studio in Encino, and it's called PCB Productions. And what they do is like they do all the voice recording for so many animated movies, live action movies, video games.
okay, I see.
So he's recorded everybody in his studio, and he also himself, because he's the talent director, he'll go on onto the motion capture stage and he'll record with the actors on a motion capture stage where they wear those like really that lycra suit with the ping pong balls all over them and
Yeah.
everything, and get scanned and everything for the video game. And so I mean that all of that those skills and tools are applicable both for film and video games. So this is not say the developer side of it where you're coding how the mechanics of the game work, or
Gaming
but
physics, yeah.
oh yeah, physics, or even like how does it turn on,
Oh,
things like
sure.
that, right? But this is a lot of the skills like well, character modeling, character animation,
Hmm.
all these things apply to both film and video games. So
So it's safe to say that if there's an individual looking at VFX as a potential in, let's just say, I think people as a whole that are creative in our industry, be it music, DPs,
mhm,
above the line, below the line, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's also an enriched palette of other creativity that individual possesses that can pull into, like you said, magic,
mm,
this, that, DP, editing, and
sure,
stuff like that. But the truth
yeah.
be told, an individual may be only known as a VFX person.
Mm.
Is it just safe to say that a VFX journey as a profession could also be applicable in the video game world? Am I correct?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
good.
And
So,
the video game world hires VFX artists all the time for all of these things. And if you if you've got experience in the animation section of VFX, those skills are absolutely transferable, and people work in both worlds all the time.
okay, so that being said, because I remember I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit, but I'm trying to keep a
Sure.
through theme on this. So you've been in Hollywood for a minute. You've been very successful. There's always new expectations we set for ourselves. We want to do better. We want to do more. We
Hmm.
want to maybe get the better jobs and stuff. We're always looking for that. It's always fun.
Hmm.
Um, so we're going to fast forward now to you now have a beautiful wife, two daughters. You and your wife, and the company you both run, because she's extremely talented. She's a writer and a producer and a director
Hmm.
herself. You are now in it to win it. You guys are making a living
Hmm.
off of the creative industries that support
Hmm.
Hollywood, or one day to throw something out there as your own body of work, film,
Hmm.
TV, etc. Um, but now, post COVID,
Hmm.
some of the biggest changes that you folks are actually facing. When I say you folks, I'm just saying Hollywood at large, which number one and
Hmm.
first and foremost is this really big strike that's opening the
Hmm.
eyes of everybody in the industry, so much so that people who have made,
Hmm.
good long livings as, once again, above the line, below the line, creative camera grips, everybody
Hmm.
involved, all the way down to catering, um, are now going, oh no,
Hmm.
the strike is really, sending a shot over the bow about what is the future of what it is that we do and we
Hmm.
love to do. So now we have to get maybe a little creative.
Hmm.
Have you, has the strike been a wake up call for you and your wife, the friends that you also work with, but for you specifically, has this been a wake up call? And what are you kind of doing? Because, I think everybody in the world needs to read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? I'm putting that link down below.
I still need to read
Yeah, I know, but
it.
still, I know that there's people who read it, but those who read it,
Hmm.
but those of you haven't, is when intuitively change is coming, but you're kind of
Hmm.
fearful about where to go. Do I
Hmm.
let go? You know what? You kind of pulled a who moved my cheese move by actually saying, no,
Hmm.
I'm going to Hollywood. I just feel that if I stay here, I'm going to
Hmm.
cap out at, what I can do. And if I move to Hollywood, I will be pushing myself. So this is kind of
Hmm.
like another who moved my cheese moment. What are you and your wife now at this point, especially learning
Hmm.
of what the impact of this Hollywood strike is at the moment and could be in the future? What are you guys doing now?
Well, I mean, as far as wake up calls, I think COVID was the wake up call, because that was the one where it was like, hey, all this can just stop, like for a lot longer than you think it will either, too. So, that was the wake up call. I think the strike is just a further reminder of all of it, because I mean, yeah, I mean everything shut down out here, and so
I mean,
when
as of
COVID.
today, it's still shut down, yeah?
Oh yeah, well, as of last night, actually, they reached an agreement, but they're right now they're just working on the for the Writers Guild at the least. They've reached an agreement, but I think now they're just settling on the contract work, the actual jargon in the contracts now. So cross your fingers. I think it's
Yeah.
wrapping up, hopefully, for the writers at least. But the well, with COVID, we actually realized we had to pivot as well at the time, and I was seeing that a lot of people are going to be like, hey, our sets are going to be different for at least a little while. They seem to have more or less gone back to what they were previously, but with the added, COVID protocols on set that they have. But we were starting to see, oh, hey, maybe they're not going to be having as many people on set, so maybe they're going to need help filling in the gaps of the background with digital extras and things like this. So
Hmm.
that was something that we kind of started getting into it when COVID hit. We started dipping our toe in the world of motion capture and animation and a lot more 3D. I wasn't terribly deep into 3D. I had a lot of 3D specialists I'd bring in to do specific things from time to time because it surprisingly doesn't come up terribly often for some of the scale of work that I've been involved in. A lot of it is just compositing or touch ups and things like that. So we haven't had a ton of 3D at the time, but now we're doing a lot more 3D. But we started to put our dip our toe into motion capture. So that's one of the tools that we've added to our arsenal. And so things like that, like trying to see, okay, how's the set going to be different these days too, and how can we make ourselves put ourselves in a better position to at least meet these needs. And we're still in a lot of we have a few more things that we're working on that we haven't released yet, but are going to be quite exciting, I think, for that in that department. Um, as far as where do I pivot here? I mean, like one of the things too is I personally have been pivoting a little bit more into consulting a lot more and producing. Myself as the artist or the in some cases the only artist on a film. It's a bit exhausting, a bit backbreaking, and like there was a time like when I was doing the Devil's Carnival, that was like I supervised that movie and was like the artist on the film. So I think I did something like 75 visual effects shots for that film, and that was pretty exhausting. When the sequel came around, we did close to or over 300 shots, and again, just
Jesus.
me. So, yeah, it was a lot to do there. So I mean, myself as the artist, I'm finding ways to put other artists in the positions where I was, so I could like hopefully pay them, respect them, all that stuff. So,
Pay them and
um,
respect them.
yeah,
That
hey,
plays into my head so many weird ways.
oh
Well,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but based on that though, I want to turn into that consulting aspect of it. Now, when you were here, you came here to Hawaii a couple of
Yeah,
weeks ago and
yeah, yeah.
visited. We sat and we talked about
Hmm.
something which I know exists as a composer. When
Hmm.
independent directors and producers or first timers, they want an orchestra. They don't have the money. They hire a
Hmm.
composer that has orchestra-like sounds, but expects a John Williams score for a few $1,000s in a Subway sandwich. I know
Mm.
a lot of people in post
How was
get
that Subway
this.
sandwich I sent you,
It
by
was
the way?
really good.
Was it all
Thank you.
right?
You son of
Okay,
a
cool. Yeah,
poo-poo.
cool.
It
Thanks.
had a file in it, so I can get out of like money
Yeah,
jail. Um, So, but it's systemic. This is something that when you're in that zero to B level film production area, you know, the
Hmm.
voiceover people, everybody has to do a deal.
Hmm.
In my case, having to sit down with directors, say, listen, I got no problem helping you in doing
Hmm.
this, but you want that particular sound. I don't
Hmm.
have the man hours to deliver to you in order to get it to you.
Yeah.
And they go, well, don't you just do this? And it sounds like a string
Oh
arrangement.
yeah.
And it's only because they just don't have the intuitive knowledge of what it takes to do that. I know that
Yeah.
you have shared that with me, that the same thing
Mm.
happens with the indie director producer, where
Oh
they
yeah.
say, well, can't you just throw some smoke and some fire here, and don't you just drag and drop? So that being said,
Hmm. Hmm.
obviously no. No, I
Yeah.
can't just drag and drop and do this, or some things I could be able to fix, but that
Mm.
requires A, B, and C. um, Explain to me a little bit. I was really intrigued when you and your wife were talking about your consulting.
Hmm.
What's the framing of the consulting? What are you doing it for? Whom are you
Mm.
doing it for?
Well, what it does is, what we do is we will meet with the client and talk about expectations, really. There's so many times where I get a script and they've written the Avengers, but they've got the Blair Witch Project budget, and so it really is kind of like, hey, no
Well done.
disrespect to Blair Witch Project. I worked with the director on that one, on another film, and he's lovely and they did a great job, but they didn't have much money, did they? So like I try to talk to these directors and really what we say within our company, we say reframe what's possible. We try to say, hey, look, okay, here's this. We know this is the story you want to tell, and these are the effects you want to do. Let's say you don't have the budget to achieve these particular effects. Here are the other things, or here are the ways we can design some effects that still tell your story the way you want to, but maybe there may have to be some concessions here and there to tell your story a certain way. Like for instance, like I worked on there's a great comedy that I worked on. It was a lot of fun. I got to work on both the original and the sequel. Is film called Hurricane Bianca, and Hurricane Bianca from Russia with Hate is the name of the so
Kind of a
um be,
Sharknado kind of thing.
uh, well, kind of, but like not no, not like Sharknado. Is starring Bianca Del Rio, is a very famous drag queen from RuPaul's Drag Race,
Oh,
and
all
so
right.
it's an awesome movie, really funny, really silly, completely absurd, but that's the point of the film, right? And in the second film, they go to Russia and they blow up the Kremlin, right? And I'm saying, and I said, okay, we could do this, but it's not going to look like Mission Impossible when they blew up the Kremlin. All right, you definitely don't have the budget for it. It's going to look silly, and it may not be completely photo real, but it's going to still tell your story the way you want, and it's not going to like it's not going to really pull anybody out of the film because look, we even had a stop motion rat like winking and pointing to the camera and everything too. So there's a degree of absurdity that is surrounding the film. So it's like, you don't necessarily have to be the full, it doesn't have to be completely photorealistic or look completely real, So like in terms of managing expectations, that's one of those things that we talk about too
Mm.
sometimes. But like know the film you're making. That kind of helps out. But yeah, so one of the things, sorry, your question was
You
about
just
how,
no. I think you pretty much answered quite a
yeah.
bit of it. Is it's the consulting services that
Hmm.
could prevent that independent producer director,
Hmm.
even from the onset, even in pre-production, as
Hmm.
possibly they're scheduling out the rest of their
Hmm.
expenses and how to get it going. That
Oh
it's
yeah.
really a really good one-stop kind of scenario to get a consultation by you.
Yeah,
Um,
it is one of those things that VFX is a lot like magic in this sense of there is sort of a curtain that people don't really look behind or even care to look behind sometimes because like with magic, it's like, okay, I know you don't have superpowers, but like, you can levitate somebody. Okay, you can do that, right? Okay, you know all that. But like in VFX, it's like, okay, well, I know you do something back there. I don't know what it is and how you do it, but I mean, it involves computers. There must be a button for that, right? You can just
right.
press a button and make that happen. I had a producer on set. there was a film I was working on, and they were about to do this really great practical stunt on set. The pyrotechnician was there, and they had like fire, and they had like it was a Western set, and there was these wagons that were rigged with all these flame bars to look like they were on fire, and all this practical stuff going on. It was beautiful, and my job was going to be eventually to enhance the fire and make it look even bigger than it was. But you start with something that's practical and it'll look even better. While they're setting all this up, it takes a little while to do. And the producer is just like, we need to look at the time. We need to hurry this up. And he comes over to me and says, hey, you can do this with a button, right? And I'm like, kind of. Yeah, I mean, we could, but this is beautiful what they're doing right here. So,
Well, there's a big disconnect sometimes.
oh, yeah.
My experience is the big disconnect between, not all, because nowadays with my generation, we're just sitting down and watching all you guys now going, what the fuck are they? No, but younger generations now are wearing many hats. You can be the director, the producer, the DP, the actor, the editor, the VFX, SFX.
Oh, sure.
You can be
Absolutely.
everything. You could be a one-stop with a handheld or the Insta360 X3 or all the series of things. You shoot your own stuff and do it.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you'd be surprised that there's still that kind of disconnect where the producer he's just looking at numbers, or the UPM, they're just looking at numbers,
Well, of
or
course,
whatever the
yeah.
case is. And then if they don't have a lot of, well, I don't know anyhow, I don't know if I misused an acronym there, but at that point, may not have a direct knowledge on post effects and what it takes to just say, well, let's just make that fire bigger and let's get rid of the smoke. I want it to be purple or whatever the case is, that there is that disconnect. So that being said,
Yeah.
Your consulting service is really geared towards helping people understand the possibilities of what they may be looking into. So in other words, like, oh, I have this great movie, I've done this, we're going to shoot it this way at the end, I want this explosion, that explosion, I want it to look like this. That perhaps consulting with you is going to save them
Oh,
X
absolutely.
amount of headache, heartache,
Yeah. Yeah.
changing the expectations, the reality of what they can get, and still probably manage to get some real decent effects. Now, that being said, because we got to get out of here soon. So that being said, though, and of course you do that, so there's going to be a link down below, so
Sure.
you can
Yep.
get a hold of Jake.
VFX2go.com.
There you go. I love that. Thank you. There'll be a link down there for you guys who are interested in talking to Jake or hanging out with Jake. The last thing I want to bring up really quick, and we'll keep this kind of short and compact. I really liked what you were sharing with me while you were here, which was you doing what I would call entry level A/B comparison, pseudo tutorials on you with your experience using some of the biggest and the best tools possible for your VFX work, to now all these new companies that come out with entry level fire, smoke, things out of it and all that sort of stuff. And you're starting to do some videos on, well, if you can't get this effect, you can kind of get it out of this. So it's kind of product reviewy, being an opinion of that. Have you started that already?
No, at the time of this recording, everything is still work in progress right now. We're getting the ball rolling on that, and I'm also I'm in the process of writing a field guide as well for these filmmakers who maybe not have all the information that they need to get into a visual effects film, a film with the kind of visual effects at least that they're thinking of, and sometimes even the small stuff that you don't necessarily consider, like looking at a cell phone, the cell phone screen's got to be comp sometimes, or like if there's a sign outside of a building, that you can't keep, you got to change the sign. There's all these visual effects that you might not always know that you need to put in, or you might not realize as a problem until you get to post production. And there's so many of my clients, I want to say like about 80% of the people that reach out to me, they reach out to me in post production, and they really should be reaching out to me like as early as the screenwriting phase sometimes, if they've if that's what they do. But like they because involving somebody like me as early on as possible helps you to save money in post production. I've been involved, like, you just kind of backtrack a little bit to what you're saying about um you know about that, but was that if Sorry. The when I'm brought in early on enough, um, sorry, I'm trying to let me give me a second.
Wind it up.
But yeah. Um, so many times they'll come to me in post production and I'll see that like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have shot it this way, maybe you should have done this, and then what those problems accumulate, you can see some the budget just starts going up and up and up, and then they have a real sticker shock when they see it. They're like, oh my god, I didn't realize the VFX were going to cost that much. But involving somebody like me as early on as possible, consulting, saying, hey, here's the approaches that I would take, having somebody on set as a supervisor like myself to look to be there with the frame and say, hey, okay, if you move that guy over there, that's the difference between like, a $500 shot and a $1,500 shot, just moving a guy by that much for rotoscoping or something like that. So things like
Ah,
things like that in the long run, will save you a lot of money. And that is one of the things, especially that I'm going to be putting out some videos and content talking about what you can do here, what you can do there. How will you save yourself some time? How will you save yourself some
I
money?
see. Okay.
Or at the very least, how can you make your footage as usable as possible in post production? I've had shots that have come to me because the client would come to me in post production, a little late. They didn't have anybody on set to supervise because either A, they didn't think it was such a big deal, B, someone told them you don't need a supervisor on set, C, they didn't want to spend the money on a supervisor on set. But whatever the reason is, sometimes they'll just shoot their film the way they're going to shoot it, and yes, I can still do what I do with your footage, but in order for me to get past certain hurdles, like, okay, maybe the camera's super shaky, then I have to have a specialist come in and really motion track that properly. We have to, if somebody crossed the frame when they shouldn't have, okay, now we got to rotoscope that. There are all these
Right.
things that you could have avoided that can make it just easier to work with the material in the end. The easier you can do that in the post, then you mitigate a lot of those costs associated with fixing all these little problems. Everybody says fix it in post, right? That's a bad word to me. I say fix it in pre-production, So
Well, that's the smart man's call, and so obviously you offer those services. Now, can they get a hold of you in that URL that we
Mhm.
just talked about?
Oh yeah,
Okay, great.
VFX to go, VFX number 2 go.com.
All right. Well, I'll make sure that link is down below. Jake, I'm out of time because I got some stuff I got to do. I can't tell you how pumped I am at the journey that you've had as somebody that I've known, somebody that I've watched, through production and here in Hawaii, where there is just so much incredible talent. It's just great to see where you are right now with your career. I actually learned a lot, and now I know what
Oh,
VFX and SFX is. No, I'm kidding. I couldn't
yeah.
figure out. And anyhow, I just want to thank you for joining me and enlightening me. And I just felt and I was compelled to want to share your story because whether you're from Hawaii or anywhere in the world and you have these dreams, that the dreams still exist. And even though the world is changing and it may not be the Hollywood that you remember, or the kind of Hollywood that you might be fantasizing still exists, as it's
Mm,
changing because of technology,
oh
and all
yeah.
that sort of stuff. There's still a need for creativity. And
Mm,
because of today's, prosumer technology and stuff, the ability to learn to do a lot of these things on your own with newer softwares and stuff means that just means there's more creative people that are going to get the opportunity to share their works out there. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that into full circle. So thank you so much, Jake. I
Thank you
really
so much for
appreciate it.
having me. It's been a pleasure always chatting with you, and can't wait to see you next time I'm in town.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know where I'm at, man. Come on down and hang out. I'll always be on the beach, buddy.
I
All
will
right,
join you.
man. You take care. Aloha. See you.
All right. Thanks so much.
See you, buddy.